The soft blue glow of the view screens illuminated the observation deck of Outpost E7, casting eerie shadows across the faces of its three occupants. Outside, beyond the reinforced thermal barriers, howling winds scraped ice particles against the station's exterior, a constant reminder of the frozen wasteland they called home. But none of the three researchers paid any attention to the storm. Their eyes were fixed on the central holographic display, which flickered with promotional images for the most popular entertainment broadcast in galactic history. "It's starting!" Hailey's voice carried an unusual note of excitement, all four of her golden amber eyes widening as she leaned forward. The slender Eve researcher's normally composed demeanor had given way to childlike anticipation. "Episode 3! I've got 200 credits writing on the Aquir this time." Lodaro, the station's Zor research engineer, inflated his throat sac in what his species considered a laugh. His moist, frog-like skin glistened under the artificial lighting as he settled his bulky frame into a specially designed chair. "Your credits might as well be in my pocket already," he croaked. "This episode is set on a swamp world. We Zor evolved in wetlands. Our moisture barriers and amphibious adaptations will certainly prove superior." From across the room, Emid clicked his curved orange beak in derision. The Cathera communications officer fluffed his black feathers and hopped onto a perch near the ceiling. "You're both delusional," he whistled. Feathers shed water. Talons gripped tree branches. My Cathera brothers would dominate this environment. He flexed his own taloned fingers for emphasis. 50 credits says they introduce a Cathera contestant who lasts at least to the final 5. Hailey waved a slender, four-fingered hand dismissively. "They wouldn't dare put Cathera in after what happened in Episode 1. Your species was too busy singing territorial songs to notice the acid pools." The debate might have continued indefinitely if the broadcast hadn't begun. The holographic display expanded, pushing out from the center of the room to surround the three aliens in a 360-degree experience. The outpost's anomaly monitoring screens, their actual duty assignment, dimmed automatically as the entertainment system detected their attention shift. A swirling kaleidoscope of colors resolved into the familiar opening sequence, and a booming synthetic voice echoed through the observation deck. "Welcome back to Level 1 versus Level 100 Deathworlder, where survival isn't just a skill, it's a species trait." The three researchers fell silent as Jimmy, V31.2, the show's artificial intelligence host, materialized before them. The holographic construct was an unsettling amalgamation of features from dozens of sentient species: Eve eyes, Cathera feathers, Zor coloration, and human proportions, all blended into a charismatic but uncanny figure. "Tonight," Jimmy's voice resonated with manufactured excitement, 100 individuals from 10 Deathworld species will face the ultimate test of adaptation. We're dropping them onto the most treacherous swamp planet in the Cygnus sector, a world so waterlogged that solid ground is merely a memory. The hologram shifted to reveal sweeping aerial views of a planet dominated by murky, green-brown water, punctuated by twisted trees growing from submerged roots and patches of floating vegetation. This unclaimed world, generously donated by the Galactic Council, will become the property of the Melody refugee population if our competition concludes successfully. Jimmy continued. "So not only will our contestants be fighting for galactic fame and ultimate bragging rights, they'll be supporting the displaced victims of the Centauri conflict." Lodaro's throat sac pulsed with skepticism. "Philanthropic entertainment," he croaked. "How convenient that charity aligns with the highest viewership numbers in broadcasting history." Hailey didn't respond. Her quadruple pupils had dilated with focus as the broadcast displayed a spinning roulette of competing species. The Eve researcher pulled out a datapad and began tapping rapidly, updating her statistical models. "The humans are back," she noted with surprise. "After their dismal showing on the lava world in Episode 2, I assumed they'd been permanently eliminated. They've got corporate sponsors now, Imid explained, his head bobbing in the way Cathera expressed interest. I've been following the human broadcasts. Some Earth corporation called Survival Technologies is bankrolling their equipment. Pure publicity stunt. The holographic display zoomed in on a staging area where representatives from each competing species were being equipped and briefed before deployment. The camera lingered on a group of humans checking gear and speaking intensely among themselves. The Level 100 Deathworlders include our returning challengers, the humans of Earth, Jimmy announced. Joining them are the Lamadare, acid-secreting centipede centaurs from Praxis 7, the aquatic Aquir from the ocean world Nereus, the armored Vecteri, the massive Gorans, the predatory T-Rex insectoids, the diminutive Cetarinans, the bone-plated Morvac, the poisonous Genturi, and finally, the telekinetic Scone. Lodaro's bulbous eyes widened in surprise. No Zor representation? This is an outrage. His throat sac inflated to twice its normal size in agitation. We're perfectly adapted for swamp environments. Hailey patted his damp arm condescendingly. The selection committee classifies Zor homeworlds as level 65 Deathworlds at most. Lodaro, you're dangerous, but not deadly enough. The broadcast continued as Jimmy explained the rules. Contestants will be dropped simultaneously at random locations. They may survive as long as possible by any non-lethal means. Anyone may voluntarily withdraw by activating their extraction beacon. The last species with surviving members will be declared the ultimate Swamp World adapters. Now, the AI host continued with programmed enthusiasm. Let's meet some of our contestants before deployment. The display shifted to show a Lamadare representative, its multiple segmented legs supporting a humanoid torso covered in chitinous armor. The creature's mandibles clicked as it spoke, a translation overlay providing subtitles. Our acid secretions will dissolve any threats. Lamadare victory is a biochemical certainty. Next came an Aquir, its blue-green scales shimmering with iridescence as water continuously flowed across its gills through a specialized environmental suit. Water is our domain. We were swimming before your ancestors crawled from primordial ooze. The broadcast cycled through representatives of each species, each boasting of unique adaptations that would ensure victory. When they reached the human spokesperson, a tall woman with dark skin and determined eyes, Haile leaned forward with analytical interest. Humans have one advantage the others lack, the woman stated calmly. We adapt not just as individuals, but as a coordinated group. Where others see obstacles, we see materials. Where others see threats, we see opportunities. She smiled confidently. We'll be the last one standing. Imid whistled in amusement. Big talk from the species that lasted 3 days on the lava world. Deploying in 5, Jimmy's voice announced as the broadcast shifted to orbital views of drop pods streaking through the swamp planet's atmosphere. 4, 3, 2, 1. The pods impacted across the planet's surface with spectacular splashes, and the competition officially began. Let the games commence, Jimmy declared, and may the best species survive. Hailey settled back in her chair and tapped a few final calculations into her datapad. The humans won't last a week in those conditions, she predicted. The Aquir are the logical favorites. Lodaro's throat sac pulsed in agreement. For once, your analysis is sound. The humans' technology will fail them in that moisture-heavy environment. Imid said nothing, but his orange beak clicked thoughtfully as he watched the human pods deploy their floating platforms. Something about their methodical organization suggested this episode might hold surprises. The first day of the competition proved brutal for several species. A torrential downpour lashed the swamp, creating waves that toppled even the most carefully constructed shelters. The Vectari, heavily armored and dependent on specialized ventilation, suffered immediate casualties when their breathing ports became submerged. Within hours, they were the first species to collectively tap out, their remaining members activating extraction beacons in a synchronous display of pragmatism. 14 hours, Haeli noted, marking the time in her records. Respiratory dependence is always a liability in high-moisture environments. The Aquir, as expected, thrived initially. Their pods converted into submersible habitats, and they vanished into deeper channels, surfacing occasionally to gather floating vegetation. The humans struggled visibly, their high-tech tents collapsing under the weight of accumulated water. Several of their floating platforms began to sink as storage compartments breached and filled with swamp water. Those fancy corporate sponsors didn't account for sustained submersion, Lodaro observed with satisfaction. Human technology isn't waterproof enough. By the end of the first day, 3 more species had been eliminated. The Gorans, despite their massive size, proved too heavy for the waterlogged environment and sank repeatedly until exhaustion forced their withdrawal. The T-Rex insectoids fared slightly better, but ultimately failed when their egg clutches, hidden in what they thought were safe hollows, were washed away by flash floods. The Morvac, whose bone plating became waterlogged and dangerously heavy, were the last to withdraw before nightfall. 6 species remain, Jimmy announced as darkness fell on the swamp world. And day 2 promises even greater challenges. The morning of the second day revealed an unexpected development. The Llama-Dare, initially dismissed as ill-suited for a watery environment, had developed an innovative survival strategy. Using their acid secretions, they had created raised platforms of compressed biomass, essentially burning and compacting floating vegetation into semi-solid islands that kept them above water level. Extraordinary, Haeli murmured, recalculating her predictions. I underestimated their chemical adaptability. The humans, meanwhile, had abandoned their sinking technological shelters and were salvaging components to create a new approach. They stripped parachute fabric from their drop pods and rigged hammock-style shelters between sturdy trees, elevating themselves completely above the water's surface. Primitive but effective, Lodaro admitted reluctantly. The third day brought new hazards as several contestants discovered the hard way that many of the swamp's colorful fruits were highly toxic. 2 Genturi collapsed after consuming purple berries, their poisonous biology ironically unprepared for the swamp's more potent toxins. By day's end, the Genturi had withdrawn entirely, leaving 5 species in competition. The following days settled into a pattern as the remaining contestants established territories and routines. The Aquir continued to dominate the underwater channels, developing sophisticated fishing techniques. The Llama-Dare maintained their acid platforms, but struggled with dwindling resources as suitable vegetation became scarce in their immediate vicinity. The Sidarinans, tiny tree-dwelling humanoids barely reaching an adult human's knee height, proved surprisingly resilient. Their diminutive size, initially considered a disadvantage, allowed them to occupy hollows in the massive swamp trees, where they constructed elaborate systems of rainwater collection and insect traps. Their natural camouflage abilities made them nearly invisible among the foliage. The Scone, with their limited telekinetic abilities, managed to create floating debris shelters. But the constant mental exertion required to maintain these structures took its toll. By the 10th day, exhaustion had claimed the last of them, and they activated their extraction beacons. The humans, after their initial struggles, displayed remarkable innovation. They fashioned crude spears from salvaged metal and wood, created fish traps from parachute cord, and established a rotational system where different individuals handled specific tasks: fire maintenance, using waterproof chemical starters, foraging, shelter improvement, and security watches. They're functioning as a single organism, Imid observed with unexpected admiration. Look how they signal each other. Indeed. The humans had developed a system of whistle signals and rope tugs that communicated across distances without revealing their positions to potential competitors. By day 20, only 3 species remained: The Aquir, still dominant in the water. The Cetarinans, nearly invisible in their arboreal hideouts. And the humans, who had established several small camps connected by a primitive communication network of taut lines between trees. "The real test begins now," Jimmy announced on the broadcast. "It's time to introduce our Predator drones." The announcement sent a ripple of excitement through the three researchers watching at Outpost E7. Predator drones were a competition staple. Adaptive AI hunters, armed with non-lethal paintball weapons. Each hit counted as a wound, and 3 wounds would force a contestant's extraction. "This is where the Aquir dominance ends," Hyali predicted, leaning forward. "Drones excel at water surface targeting." She was proven correct as the drones deployed from hidden pods throughout the swamp. Hovering just above the water, they targeted any movement below with unerring accuracy. The Aquir, accustomed to swimming freely, suddenly found their greatest advantage neutralized. The drone's sensors could detect underwater movement and fired special penetrating paint capsules that expanded on impact. One by one, Aquir contestants accumulated wounds until they were forced to withdraw. Their final holdout, a particularly clever individual who had created a camouflaged breathing tube, was discovered on day 32 when a drone's thermal sensors detected the temperature differential between the Aquir's body and the surrounding water. "And then there were 2, Jimmy declared, as the last Aquir activated their extraction beacon. "Humans versus Cetarinans. Who will master the swamp?" The competition now entered its most fascinating phase. The Cetarinans, masters of stealth, moved only under cover of darkness or during heavy rainfall. Their bark-like skin provided perfect camouflage against the swamp trees, and their minimal resource needs meant they rarely had to expose themselves to drone detection. The humans employed a different strategy entirely. They organized into hunter-gatherer teams with dedicated drone spotters. When a drone approached, spotters would blow silent dog whistles, inaudible to the drones but clear to human ears, prompting immediate evasive action. They constructed dummy camps with simulated heat signatures to distract the drones and experimented with burning certain swamp herbs that seemed to interfere with drone sensors. "I'm upgrading my assessment of human adaptation capabilities," Hyli announced on day 34, reviewing her notes. "Their problem-solving methodology is unusually flexible." Lodaro reluctantly agreed. "They repurpose failure into opportunity. When their technology failed, they reverted to historical techniques rather than stubbornly persisting with flawed approaches." Imid seemed the least surprised. Human entertainment media has always showcased this trait. They call it thinking outside the box, a spatial metaphor for conceptual innovation. The competition seemed headed for a protracted stalemate until day 35. When an unexpected environmental shift changed everything. A sudden cold front moved across the swamp planet, dropping temperatures dramatically. The surface water began to freeze at night, creating a treacherous mix of ice and mud. This development proved catastrophic for the Cetarinans. Their small body mass and high metabolism made them vulnerable to hypothermia, forcing an impossible choice: remain in their tree hollows and slowly starve as foraging became too dangerous, or risk exposure to both the cold and the ever-vigilant drones. The humans, meanwhile, had anticipated weather variations. Their parachute fabric shelters had been lined with insulating materials salvaged from their original equipment, and they maintained well-protected fires. They organized into shifts, allowing some to rest in the relative warmth, while others gathered additional firewood and checked preserved food supplies. By the morning of day 36, the Cetarinans faced the inevitable. With temperatures continuing to drop and food reserves depleted, their leader made the difficult decision. All remaining Cetarinans activated their extraction beacons simultaneously, sending a constellation of blue light signals into the twilight sky. "We have our winners!" Jimmy's holographic form appeared above the frozen swamp surface. Humanity has proven that brains and cooperation beat brawn and specialization. The Swamp World Championship goes to the humans of Earth. The broadcast showed the human survivors gathering their minimal gear and boarding a sleek transport vessel that would return them to the galactic stage for their victory ceremony. Despite their haggard appearance and obvious exhaustion, they moved with the quiet confidence of those who had proven themselves against impossible odds. Back at Outpost E7, Hailey silently collected her winnings. Lodaro and Amid transferred the credits to her account without complaint, both uncharacteristically thoughtful as they watched the closing ceremony. "I admit I underestimated them," Lodaro finally said, his throat sac pulsing with reluctant respect. "Their adaptability isn't just technological, it's psychological. They don't get trapped in expectations." Emid bobbed his head in agreement. "Most species optimize for individual survival. Humans optimize for group survival." The distinction proved decisive. Hailey's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she considered this insight. "Perhaps we should study human group dynamics more systematically, for future betting purposes, of course." As the broadcast concluded, the 3 researchers reluctantly returned their attention to the anomaly monitoring systems that constituted their actual assignment. But the conversation continued to circle back to what they had witnessed: how a supposedly inferior species had shifted galactic perceptions through adaptability and cooperation. When Jimmy appeared for the final segment, announcing the next episode's beast-taming competition, Swamp World 2.0, Lodaro immediately declared his confidence in Zor competitors, while Hailey cautioned that humans would likely figure it out again. Emid simply clicked his beak thoughtfully and began researching human social organization patterns. Something told him the galactic hierarchy was shifting before their eyes, one reality competition at a time. The next morning found Healy already at her monitoring station when Lodaro arrived, his skin glistening with the morning hydration ritual, all Zor required. "You're early," he noted, settling into his customized chair. "Anomaly detection suddenly fascinating?" Hailey's upper set of eyes remained fixed on her display, while her lower pair shifted toward Lodaro. "I've been reviewing the broadcast analytics. Do you realize that Level 1 versus Level 100 Deathworlder had over 78 billion concurrent viewers? That's approximately 11% of the sentient galactic population." Lodaro's throat sac pulsed with mild interest. "Entertainment transcends species boundaries. Is this surprising?" "What's surprising," Hailey continued, "is the shift in betting patterns following human victory. The galactic odds markets have adjusted all human-related predictions upward by an average of 17%. They're being reclassified in risk assessment protocols." Emid swooped down from his sleeping perch, his black feathers perfectly groomed. "It's not just betting markets," he added, extending a data tablet with his taloned hand. "Look at interspecies exchange applications. Requests for human cultural and educational materials have increased 23-fold since the broadcast." Lodaro took the tablet, his bulbous eyes scanning the information. "This seems disproportionate. They survived a contrived entertainment scenario, not an actual survival crisis." "Perception shapes reality," Hailey replied, finally turning all 4 eyes toward her colleagues. "The Galactic Council classified humans as Level 100 Deathworlders based on Earth's environmental hazards, not their adaptive capabilities. Now, the broader population is reconsidering that assessment." A soft chime interrupted their conversation. The anomaly detection system had registered an unusual reading. All 3 researchers turned their attention to the main display, where a strange warp signature was forming at the edge of their monitoring range. "Frequency pattern doesn't match any known species," Lodaro noted, his professional interest engaged. "Could be naturally occurring spatial distortion. Or someone using masking technology," Emid suggested, his feathers puffing slightly in excitement. Smugglers often modify their warp signatures. Hailey ran a series of comparative analyses, her slender fingers dancing across the control interface. Pattern has a 42% similarity to human civilian transport signatures, but with significant deviations in the gamma spectrum. Human. Lodaro's throat sack inflated with surprise. They don't have ships this far out in the fringe. According to official records, Imid clarified, his beak clicking thoughtfully. The anomaly reading faded before they could gather more data, leaving the three researchers with an unanswered question. Were humans exploring beyond their authorized territories? Or had the entertainment broadcast simply made them hypersensitive to human-related patterns? Before they could discuss it further, the entertainment system activated automatically. A special announcement was being broadcast across all channels. Jimmy V31.2's composite form materialized in the center of the room, but the AI host's usual exuberant demeanor had been replaced with a more serious presentation. Attention, galactic citizens. Following the unprecedented success of Level 1 versus Level 100 Deathworlder, the Production Council is pleased to announce an expanded format for future episodes. The hologram shifted to display promotional imagery of diverse planetary environments: frozen tundra, sprawling deserts, dense jungles, and even what appeared to be an asteroid field. Future competitions will feature not only survival challenges, but cooperative scenarios, where different species must work together to overcome environmental hazards. Jimmy continued. The first cooperative episode will pair humans with Zor representatives in a flooded cavern challenge. Lodaro's throat sack inflated to maximum size, the Zor equivalent of a shocked gasp. They're putting us in the competition with humans? Public demand, highly noted with clinical interest. Ratings drive content. Jimmy's announcement continued. Additionally, we are introducing a new competition category: technological adaptation. Species will be evaluated not only on their biological resilience, but on their ability to repurpose and innovate with limited resources. Imid whistled softly. They're restructuring the entire format to showcase human strengths. Or, Hailey suggested, they're testing whether human adaptability transfers to interspecies cooperation. The broadcast concluded with a recruitment notice, encouraging representatives from all recognized sentient species to apply for upcoming episodes. Participation would be compensated with not only credits, but also with territorial concessions and research grants. When the hologram faded, the three researchers sat in contemplative silence, their assigned monitoring duties temporarily forgotten. I should apply, Lodaro finally said, his voice unusually serious. The Zor Ecological Research Institute would benefit substantially from the grants offered. Imid clicked his beak in surprise. You'd willingly partner with humans? Yesterday you were dismissing their victory as luck. Adaptation requires recognizing changing circumstances, Lodaro replied, his throat sac pulsing with quiet determination. If humans are redefining galactic entertainment and, by extension, interspecies relations, the logical response is participation rather than resistance. Hailey's four eyes blinked in sequence, her species' expression of approval. A surprisingly insightful conclusion, Lodaro. Perhaps you're more adaptable than statistical models would predict. Their conversation was again interrupted by the anomaly detection system. The same unusual warp signature had reappeared, stronger and more defined. Definitely not a natural phenomenon, Imid confirmed, focusing the sensors. The pattern is repeating too precisely. Hailey enhanced the reading, isolating specific frequency components. The base signature matches commercial human drives, but the modifications are unlike anything in our database. Should we report it? Lodaro asked, his professional caution reasserting itself. Before either of his colleagues could respond, the anomaly vanished again, leaving only encrypted data fragments that quickly degraded beyond recovery. Curious timing, Hailey noted. immediately following an announcement about expanded human participation in galactic entertainment? You think there's a connection? Imid's head tilted in the Cathara expression of skepticism. I think, Hyali replied carefully, that coincidences merit scrutiny when they involve species currently reshaping galactic perceptions. The rest of their shift passed without further anomalies. But the conversation repeatedly returned to the humans and their unexpected impact on interspecies dynamics. When the next entertainment broadcast began, a preview of the upcoming beast taming competition, none of the researchers suggested returning to their monitoring duties. The preview showed a new swamp world environment, similar to the previous competition, but with a significant modification: the introduction of genetically engineered predatory creatures. These swamp beasts represented a combination of the most dangerous traits from multiple worlds: the stealth of Cathara hunters, the amphibious abilities of Zor ambushers, and the raw strength of Earth crocodilians. Contestants must not only survive the environment, Jimmy explained, but must also establish dominance over these apex predators. Points will be awarded for successful taming techniques, with bonuses for non-violent approaches. The preview concluded with dramatic footage of a massive scaled creature lunging from murky water, jaws agape, and multiple eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. Registration opens next cycle, Jimmy announced. Do you have what it takes to master both world and beast? As the preview ended, Lodaro immediately began formulating arguments for why Zor contestants would excel at this challenge. Our ancestral connection to amphibious predators gives us innate understanding of their behavioral patterns, he insisted, his throat sac pulsing with enthusiasm. Hyali appeared unconvinced. The humans will approach it as a domestication problem rather than a dominance display. They've co-evolved with predators for millennia, developing multiple taming methodologies. Wager? Imid suggested, his orange beak gleaming in the artificial light. Double stakes on this episode? Before they could settle the terms, an emergency communication interrupted. The central display switched to a secure channel, revealing the stern features of Station Commander Drelk, a Vosian whose crystalline exoskeleton glittered with authority indicators. Research team! The commander's voice resonated with unusual urgency. Report to the secure briefing room immediately. Priority Alpha. The communication ended without explanation, leaving the three researchers exchanging concerned glances. Priority Alpha? Lodaro's throat sac contracted in apprehension. That's reserved for security threats or first contact scenarios, neither of which falls within our research parameters, Hyli noted, her four eyes narrowing with analytical focus. Imid was already moving toward the door, his natural Cathara caution overridden by curiosity. Perhaps it relates to our anomalous readings. The secure briefing room was located 3 levels below their observation deck, in a section of the outpost specifically shielded against both physical and electronic intrusion. As they entered, they found not only Commander Drelk, but also 2 unfamiliar figures: a stern-faced Meridian security officer whose bioluminescent patterns indicated high rank, and a human female in a plain gray uniform, devoid of identifying insignia. Researchers, Commander Drelk began without preamble. What I am about to share is classified under Galactic Council Directive 7293. Disclosure to unauthorized entities carries severe penalties. The commander activated a holographic display in the center of the room, showing a star chart of their sector, with several locations marked in pulsing red. Over the past 28 cycles, we have detected a pattern of anomalous warp signatures in this region. Initial analysis suggested routine drive variations, but further investigation reveals a coordinated effort to mask non-registered transits through regulated space. The human woman stepped forward, her movements carrying the unmistakable precision of military training. We have reason to believe these signatures belong to unregistered human exploration vessels. Lodaro's throat sac pulsed with vindication. I knew the signature had human characteristics. The woman's expression remained impassive. What you detected was intentionally leaked. A controlled revelation designed to gauge response patterns. A test, Haeli realized, her analytical mind quickly processing implications. You wanted to see if we would report it. Among other objectives, the human acknowledged with a slight nod. My name is Commander Reyes. I represent the Earth Alliance Special Diplomatic Corps. Imid's head tilted sharply, the Cathara expression of surprise. Earth doesn't have a Special Diplomatic Corps in any official registry. Commander Reyes smiled thinly. Correct. The Meridian security officer, whose luminescent patterns had been pulsing with increasing intensity, finally spoke. The Galactic Council has become aware of unauthorized human expansion beyond their allocated territories. Diplomatic channels have proven ineffective. What does this have to do with our research station? Haeli asked. Her 4 eyes focused intently on the human. Commander Drelk answered instead. Your monitoring equipment has been recording these anomalous signatures for months. But more importantly, your team has demonstrated unusual insight into human adaptive behaviors through your entertainment analysis. Commander Reyes nodded. The broadcast you've been watching aren't merely entertainment. They're carefully orchestrated assessment tools. A stunned silence fell over the 3 researchers as the implications sank in. You're saying Level 1 versus Level 100 Deathworlder is some kind of military evaluation program? Lodaro finally asked, his voice unnaturally high with disbelief. Not military, Commander Reyes corrected. Strategic. The competitions provide data on how different species respond to environmental challenges under controlled conditions. Data that would be impossible to gather through conventional research methods. The Meridian officer's patterns flickered with what translated as impatience. The issue is not the competitions themselves, but what humans are doing with the resulting information. They're mapping species-specific vulnerabilities and adaptive capacities. Haeli's analytical mind made the connection immediately. And using that knowledge to guide their unauthorized expansion. They're selecting territories based on which species would have the most difficulty contesting them. Commander Reyes didn't confirm or deny this assessment directly. Instead, she activated a secondary holographic display showing footage from the Swamp World competition, specifically, the moment when humans abandoned their failing technology in favor of primitive but effective solutions. What did you observe in this sequence? She asked. Imid responded first. Adaptive regression. They willingly abandoned advanced tools when environmental conditions rendered them ineffective. Precisely, Commander Reyes nodded. Now consider the implications for diplomatic and territorial strategies. The room fell silent again as the 3 researchers processed this perspective. It was Haeli who finally verbalized the conclusion. If technological advantages are neutralized, negotiations default to biological and psychological factors, she said slowly. Humans excel at functioning under technological constraints, which gives them leverage in any scenario where advanced systems might be compromised. Commander Reyes smiled, the expression of a teacher pleased with a student's insight. Which is why the Galactic Council has authorized a special joint task force to monitor and analyze human expansion patterns. Commander Drelk's crystalline features shifted into the Vosgian equivalent of a formal pronouncement. Your research team is being reassigned, effective immediately. You will continue your ostensible duties monitoring space anomalies, but your primary mission will be to analyze the entertainment broadcasts for strategic patterns and implications. You want us to watch game shows as our official assignment? Lodaro's throat sack inflated with confused excitement. We want you to recognize that these are not merely game shows, the Meridian officer corrected, luminescent patterns pulsing with emphasis. They are sophisticated data-gathering operations disguised as entertainment. Commander Reyes added, your unique combination of species perspectives and analytical backgrounds makes your team ideally suited for this assignment. You've already demonstrated the ability to identify human adaptive strategies that others have missed. Emid's feathers ruffled with professional pride, but his natural Cathara caution reasserted itself. If these competitions are strategic intelligence operations, why broadcast them openly? Why not gather this data secretly? An excellent question, Commander Reyes acknowledged. The answer lies in human psychological preferences. We achieve better performance metrics when participants believe they're competing for public recognition rather than in classified assessments. They don't know. Hailey's four eyes widened in surprise. The human contestants aren't aware they're being evaluated for strategic purposes? Most aren't, Commander Reyes confirmed. Though the producers and certain corporate sponsors operate with full awareness. Commander Drelk interrupted, with a gesture that indicated the briefing was concluding. You will receive detailed instructions and analysis protocols through secure channels. Your official duties remain unchanged as far as station records are concerned. As they were dismissed and began making their way back to their observation deck, the three researchers maintained a stunned silence until they were certain they were alone in the transport tube. Did that actually happen? Lodaro finally asked. His voice hushed despite the privacy. Emid clicked his beak nervously. I'm still processing the implications. Entertainment as strategic assessment. It's elegant, Hailey admitted, her analytical mind already adapting to this new paradigm. Gathering multi-species response data under controlled conditions while simultaneously influencing public perception of human capabilities. But is it ethical? Emid pressed. Manipulating billions of viewers across thousands of species? Lodaro's throat sac pulsed with resigned acceptance. Ethics are irrelevant if the strategy proves effective. The humans have found a methodology that exploits our collective fascination with competitive spectacle. When they reached the observation deck, they found the entertainment system already activated, displaying a countdown to the next episode of Beast Taming Competition. But now, the innocuous game show had transformed in their perception. What once seemed merely entertaining now revealed itself as an intricate web of assessment, influence, and strategic positioning. We should establish systematic evaluation protocols, Hailey suggested, her professional instincts engaging with the new assignment. Track adaptive patterns across episodes, correlate with known human historical strategies, and monitor which species-specific vulnerabilities they're cataloging, Emid added, settling onto his perch with newfound purpose. Lodaro moved to his station and began calling up reference materials on human military and exploration history. We should also cross-reference these entertainment scenarios with actual territorial expansion patterns. As the countdown continued toward the next broadcast, the three researchers found themselves drawn into their new mission with unexpected enthusiasm. What had begun as a casual distraction from their monotonous monitoring duties had transformed into something far more significant. They were now on the front lines of understanding perhaps the most adaptable and unpredictable species in the galaxy. The observation deck of Outpost E7 had become, without anyone noticing until now, a listening post in an unacknowledged Cold War. And as the next episode prepared to begin, Hailey, Lodaro, and Emid settled in to watch, not just with the eyes of entertained spectators, but with the analytical focus of strategic analysts. I still think the Zor would dominate in beast taming, Lodaro insisted, his throat sac pulsing stubbornly. Hailey's four eyes blinked in sequence, her species version of an eye roll. Save it for your official assessment report. Emid clicked his beak in what might have been amusement or apprehension. Either way, I suspect the humans will figure it out again. The countdown reached 0, and Jimmy V31.2's holographic form materialized once more. Welcome back to Level 1 versus Level 100 Deathworlder, where survival isn't just a skill, it's a species trait. But now, beneath the entertainment, They could finally see the strategic game being played across the stars.